Hey folks, this is Vince with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and today we're going to check out the Warrior class for Heroes of Hammerwatch 2. Now, like my other guide videos, I have to stress that this is not a catch-all, you must do this in order to win as the Warrior kind of video. That's not what this is. I encourage you to figure out your own playstyle, to figure out what you like to do, because, if we all played the same way, if we all adopted the same meta, it gets very boring. So I'll tell you what I've been doing with Warrior and show you what it's all about, and then you can make your own decisions. Let's start with weapons, and as you can see here, the Warrior has quite a bit of a choice. You could do a two-handed axe, you could do a one-handed axe and a shield, you could do a two-handed maul. I mean, there's lots of choices, okay? And to be honest with you, I'm currently rocking a two-handed crossbow. Now that does have its disadvantages, however, so I should really drive that home. You're really going to want to use a two-handed weapon, or if you want some extra survivability, go with a one-handed weapon and a shield, because the one-handed weapon will utilize melee. And melee is the driving force to some of the orb upgrades and to some of the synergies that are around this class. I use the two-handed crossbow because I think it's fun with my Warrior Tyrant spec. But like I said, I do that for fun. Okay, I actually pushed the last NG with this. It took a while. Damage wasn't as consistent as I would have liked, but it was fun. I enjoyed it, and I could kill stuff at range and not put myself at risk all the time like other melee classes do. But I have to stress, there are some melee tags throughout the Warrior build that will rely on you having a melee weapon. So just be mindful of that before you go, oh, I must do the crossbow thing too, because there's going to be some things that you're going to be missing out on. Let's talk about attributes real quick. Now, the obvious here is strength and vitality. Strength houses your spell power and your armor, so you're getting a twofer there. And of course, you're going to want a lot of health, because at the higher NGs, enemies just keep getting harder and harder per the latest patch. So you're going to want a lot of health as well. However, and this is something that you could totally do if you want to try it, you could also try various crit builds, and for that you'll need to raise your intelligence a bit. And this is going to be especially true with the Berserker, which favors crit chance and crit damage. It's a specialization. We'll get into specs later, but just know that some of the possibilities the Warrior has involves crit and crit damage, and for that, increasing intelligence might be the way to go. I personally haven't tested this because I'm not a big crit kind of person. I like consistent damage rather than it just being a chance, but that's just the way I play. So consider not only a strength vitality build, but maybe a mix of strength, intelligence, and vitality. Intelligence, especially if you're going to play the Berserker spec. Trinkets, real quick. I would highly recommend anything with spell power. I always recommend spell power, but spell power is good. However, I would also recommend anything with the physical tag, because the Warrior does have skills that revolve around the physical tag. I would also recommend vitality, because vitality is good for an up-close and personal kind of Warrior. And then lastly, again, if you're going to take that Berserker spec, I would highly recommend that you find something with crit chance or crit damage to further the use of that Berserker specialization. Enchanting. Now keep in mind, I'm not one of those people that has one set for everybody. I don't pass sets along to different classes. Everyone has their own set because I'm lazy. So I don't have the resources to enchant everything all the time, and what you're looking at here is most certainly not what I would want on my Warrior. I just got this gear, and I will eventually get to it. Maybe I won't. We'll see. But the ones I would recommend, either Mighty or Powerful. Mighty if you want a thematic Warrior doing a bunch of weapon power, weapon damage kind of thing. If you want to go in there and swing your double-handed axe or whatever and kill stuff, look at Mighty. Now granted, spell power is favored, typically 95% of the time. So you'll want Powerful if you want spell power and your skills to be better. But thematically, if you want to go in there with your axe, use Mighty. I'm not going to tell you no. It's your game. You do what you want. So Mighty or Powerful, depending on, how you want to play. And again, keep in mind different gear have different keywords to look at. So this Stout, for example, if you're looking for vitality, maybe consider putting stout on your chest plate or whatever is appropriate. So yeah, stout, I would look at stout for more health. The higher the NG, the harder the enemies hit. So you're going to want more health. And I think that's going to be huge. Also, if you can find like of protection, that's a minus 5% damage taken. That's a good one. The blues, I don't worry too much about because red gems are harder to get than the blue ones. So I really don't re-enchant these if I have the choice, because I'm going to find better gear soon anyway if I'm NG pushing. But I would also recommend Of Zeal if you can enchant it with Of Zeal. Reason being, melee classes have less to work with when it comes to mitigating curse because they're up close and personal with almost 95% of the enemies they're dealing with. So you're going to need extra protection when it comes to curse until they rework the whole thing. So you may want like a third of stout for vitality, a third of powerful for the spell power, and then maybe a third of zeal. So that way, in addition to the food, addition to the tavern drinks, maybe you'll get like 70% protection against curse, which will help you out but during your run. That's up to you. You can break this up however you want. But I would either do Of Protection for just flat damage taken or Of Zeal if you can manage that. And again, the rest is completely up to you. Stout, I would just more health. Mana, if you can find the Mana Crystallizer, which is a blue trinket, during your run, you're set. So you don't have to worry too much about mana, assuming you find the right trinkets. And if you feel like you're good on health, like maybe you don't want a third health, maybe consider Brawny. Brawny gives you strength, and as we saw on the attribute section, the strength attribute will give you spell power and armor. So also consider Brawny as well if you think you don't need stout, for example. Let's talk about the Ye Old Magic Shop and orb upgrades and the like. Typically, I never run axes, these throwing axes. You'll see that a little bit later. So I never look for those. I really don't. Although that instantly kill an enemy on low life. Typically, if they're that low, they're going to die in one hit anyway. So I don't worry too much. What I do look at is the second win ability, because that's going to be one of your two primary ways to regenerate health. Second win, you regain a portion of your health when casting Warcry. That is available no matter what spec you choose. So that's going to be super helpful. Another thing that I look at is Mighty Strength for Armor Pen. I find that useful. I don't always take it. I do prioritize toughness first if I can get that instead. You just take less damage, 10, 20, 30%. That's huge, especially at the higher NG levels when things hit a lot harder. Now, here's one that I was talking about that relies on melee. So if you're using a two-handed crossbow, never pick the skill because it's never going to kick in. This says you deal increased damage with melee skills. So if you're running a crossbow, don't take this. But if you are running a two-handed weapon or, regular melee, you can take that, sure. I would recommend this. The more damage is good. That way you can kill things quicker. But if you're running a crossbow, don't take that one. There's also Killer Physique. That's going to be the other main regen. Each stack increases your health regen. So 2, 4, 8%. You're going to be getting, this ability sort of cycled on you in and out constantly because you're going to be killing things at killing spree. So you're going to want that skill if you can find it. Okay. Dauntless, this is a good one to have, but again, it does require melee hits. Let's say you're fighting Avatar, and if you fought Avatar before, you'll know that he barely has any ads, except in the middle of the fight, or no, 1/3 of the way in, he disappears and all those things appear. There's little shadow forms. On occasion, a shadow form will appear when you're fighting him in the last half, but typically there's not a whole lot of, enemies to kill to keep your killing spree up. Well, with Dauntless, so as long as you've got a melee weapon, you can keep your killing spree up, which then sort of factors in with this health regen per stack. So again, you've got two crucial spells here, combat training, or upgrades, I should say, combat training and Dauntless. If you have a melee weapon, consider those as well. Otherwise, just ignore them because they're not going to do anything for you. As far as the rest of these are concerned, these are specialization specific, and I'm not going to go into them right this second. Tavern drinks. Again, I'm not going to touch on the basic ones that normally everyone would take. Bishop's Blessed Bread, that's typical. I'm going to talk about ones you may want to consider. I'm not saying you should, I'm just saying you may want to. The Ambitious Adept, plus 25% spell crit chance and plus 20% spell mana cost. You'll see later that the Berserker is all about crit. So, and that's based on like skills and the like. So if you can take this, and if you don't have any mana issues, you'll see a significant increase with how Berserker will just get better and better and better. You'll really see that. However, like I said, there is a mana concern there, especially if you take the Impetuous Apprentice with it. You can do your spells more often, so you can do chains or whatever leap, whatever specialization you are, whatever skills you have. However, there's another mana cost, and by default, my mana is typically low because all of it's going to health. That the warrior favors strength, not mana or focus. Typically, focus isn't, a warrior's focus. So you're gonna be in dire straits with those two until you find a trinket or two that helps to offset that. There's like the mana crystallizer, for example, where enemies have a chance to drop mana crystals. You find that and you've got these two things, you're gold. I mean, you can do that. You can take a run and hope that you find the trinket that you need, but you're not always going to get it. But the mana crystallizer, if you can get it, you'll be able to just keep going. You'll be a machine. And then the other thing to think about, and again, that's not that one. It's Thrill Seeker. Plus 200% health regen when below half health. Health regen set to 0 when above half health. And that seems kind of weird, but when you look at the Berserker, which we'll be talking about stacks very soon, there's an upgrade for the Berserker, the orb upgrade for the Berserker, that will actually reward you for being lower health. So this will keep you from dying, but won't allow you to go above the skill level of that upgrade, if that makes any sense. It keeps you somewhere around the middle. And again, having low health as a Berserker spec makes you stronger. So that's one thing to consider. I would only consider Thrill Seeker with that Berserker spec, but hey, maybe it might work for you with the other two specs as well. It's something for you to try out anyway. Weapon Mastery, this is a no-brainer. If you want to do more melee damage, just find the weapon that you like and put points into it. Like I said, the warrior has tons of different options available to them. You can even go into crossbows if you want. If you like that two-handed crossbow, again, keep in mind the crossbow isn't affected by all of the warrior's buffs and skills, so just be warned of that. So if you really like the two-handed axe, or really like the two-handed mauler, I think that would be under maces, just if you really like them, then by all means buff them up. But it's gonna be hard, because I think some people are gonna be like, well, I'm a warrior, I'm supposed to kill things with my weapons, but yet your weapon damage sometimes isn't as good as your spell power. So you're gonna be at ends deciding whether or not to put points into this. I say if you want to do it, go for it. You can always respec later by spending resources to do it. You can always take stars out, I guess, is what I'm saying. If you don't like what you're doing, you can always respec. So my advice here is, if you find yourself using melee a whole lot, you just want to see flat percentage damage increase with weapon damage, find a weapon and stick with it and upgrade it here accordingly. You could ignore everything else. We've talked about guild titles in a separate video, but here it is real quick. The warrior grants 3 health per level. Health is good. It'll help you stay alive in the later NG levels. Enemies hit really hard. Having 105 health extra on top of what you would normally have might save you an enchant, like a stout enchant that you would normally apply, and you can put that to better use, like spell power, whatever. So leveling the warrior isn't bad. Just be warned that it's harder to do, in my opinion, because he is melee, typically, and he is more prone to curse unless you take the appropriate precautions. Let's talk about your basic skills real quick. As I mentioned, whirling axes, I have 1 point in there just so I have it as an oh crap button, but I typically never use it unless I really, really, really need to do a lot of damage all at once. I know some people use this. I personally don't. You would have to make the decision as to whether or not you feel like using it. I just feel like other spells are better for the mana cost. Warcry, this is an absolute must in my opinion. The fact that it increases your weapon speed, movement speed, it's amazing. A lot of things are affected by Warcry when you're doing stuff, and including your health. Like if you take that one skill that's going to regenerate health when you cast Warcry, you're going to have it up anyway. You might as well buff it up, you know? So Warcry, in my opinion, super helpful. Warrior's Constitution, this is a no-brainer. More health, more poison resistance, duh. More health, yeah, hello. Just take it. Killing Spree, this is another good one. You gain stacks of Killing Spree by killing enemies. Each stack increases your damage. You lose all stacks at once if the duration runs out. So the reason I maxed this out, damage per stack, 5%, that's really good. But also stack duration. The longer your stack duration, the longer that 1 mana regen ability will kick in if you took it as an orb upgrade. So there are, again, other things that may affect this. So Killing Spree, I recommend maxing that out. Again, as far as these other ones go, these are specialization actives and passives, and we'll talk about them shortly. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about specializations real quick. The Berserker is all about crit. Let's take a look at it. The active is Leap and the passive is Rage, and the passive Rage is what I really want to focus on here. Taking damage will grant you a temporary Rage buff for a period, increasing your crit chance and crit damage with physical skills. I have to emphasize physical skills. The word physical or the tag physical will be floating around the warrior for various things. Your primary weapon typically uses physical. This Leap ability here uses physical. Some of your basic abilities use physical, so you're going to have to pay attention to what abilities have that physical tag. And you're also going to want to, like I said, combine like tavern drinks that utilize crit or trinkets that utilize crit. Anything that you can get to increase your crit chance and crit damage, you'll see the Berserker really, 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 really shine. That's really what you're going to want to do. And the orb upgrades for Rage are really good as well. The first one, Unyielding Rage, you automatically gain Rage when on low life, and you also take less damage when on low life, up to 60% if you fully upgrade it. That's really good. And then Furious Cry, you gain Rage when casting Warcry. So if you upgrade your Warcry and are always using it, you just cast it and you gain Rage doing that. So that's also good. And your cooldowns are also reduced during Rage. So that's one way of getting faster cooldowns without having to take a certain tavern drink. So, in my opinion, fully upgrading this Rage and finding crit trinkets and abilities and different things like that, that's going to be the primary focus here. And I like Leap too because in addition to dash, it gets you around very, very, very quickly. And you can even upgrade that to leave fire behind when you land or something like that. But typically, what I focus on when I play Berserker is the crit. That's what I would focus on. Primalist, I enjoyed him for NG0, but anything after that was just slow and painful. See, here's the thing. I'm one of those people that love turrets. I love to set it and forget it. The Demon Hunter was one of my favorite classes in Diablo because I could put down turrets. So totems are like, you can upgrade totems to like electrify when they're near each other, but they're still a crappier version of Chaos Orbs at that point that the Warlock has, or the Chaos Rifts, whatever they're called, that the Chaos Warlock drops. So you can have your totems act like the Warlock's Chaos Rifts, but they're not as good, and they do damage, sure, but I tested this. Each tick of the totem did roughly 200 some damage. My crossbow by default does 200 some damage. So it's not really all that powerful when I compare the two. I could just do the same amount of damage with my two-handed crossbow. So, like, over time, this in the higher NGs, or even the mid NGs, this Primalist really falls behind, in my opinion. It was fun. My thing was in NG0, get a two-handed maul and put a totem down, and then when the enemies walked into the totem's range, I would use my two-handed maul's secondary to stun them, and that would kill them. But that's not going to work at a higher tier. And on top of that, that goes against everything a warrior is supposed to do. And a Primalist, you're kind of like hanging around corners and ambushing. That's more of a rogue thing. You know, warriors want to get in there and kill stuff. And Primalist typically isn't that. So I liked Primalist less the longer I played this. So I enjoyed it at first, but it just kind of fell off for me. And then lastly, the Tyrant. That's the one I NG push with typically. The chains are really good. Their upgraded versions of the chain isn't bad, but what really shines here is Ruthlessness. You deal increased physical damage and your physical skills gain a chance to inflict stacks of bleeding. My two-handed crossbow is physical, and and has pierce, so I do a crap ton of damage just with that. It's one of the few primary weapons that I always use instead of spell damage. Like when I'm playing a wizard or a warlock or whatever, I don't care about my weapon damage. I focus on spell power. But here with a warrior two-handed crossbow, like it actually does decent damage and it pierces on top. I can take out mobs with my two-handed crossbow. This ruthlessness, that extra 50% damage really drives that home. So I enjoy Tyrant for NG pushing, and the two-handed crossbow with it is great, but I have to stress, again, you're going to have to skip out on some melee skills that you'd typically be offered throughout your run via orb upgrade. So again, just be wary of that. And crossbows are also physical damage, not spell damage. So at higher levels, that crossbow damage may even start falling off because, you know, at least with intelligence, spell power typically goes up, or whatever the primary attribute is for that class, spell power goes up. There's no attribute for weapon damage yet. So at some point, that crossbow even isn't going to be as good as spell power. So just keep that in the back of your mind. I mean, unless you find better gear, of course. But I'm just saying, I have a feeling spell power is just going to keep getting better and better and better because your attributes can keep going up. Also, I would recommend the Slayer and Exploding Gibbs orb upgrades for the Tyrant. I think those are the best out of all of them. And there you have it. Hopefully this video helped you out. Now keep in mind, the developers are going to be patching and changing things, so I'm not trying to go too in-depth about everything. But in the meantime, this should help you out with the Warrior. Also, if you aren't subbed yet, please sub. It helps me out. And also, if you want to see more Heroes of Hammerwatch 2 videos, you have to support the existing ones by sharing them and the like. So do your best to drive more people to my channel. And if I see an increase in viewership, then I'll be making more videos. That's just guaranteed. This is Vince. Thanks for watching. I'll catch y'all next time. Take care.